All right, good morning, everyone. Welcome to our 13th Fusion Friday. My name is Brian Mogapunsek.
My name is Alex Alvarez.
And I hope you guys are well rested from the holidays. I was able to spend time with my family and friends. I don't know about you guys, but really well rested, I'd say.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Much needed rest, that we could have all used, definitely.
Yeah, so now I'm energized and ready to hit the new year, start running with this first Fusion Friday here. So yeah, let's get to it. So first, a quick reminder before we get started. We're KETIV Technologies. We're a Autodesk Platinum partner that provides training, support, and consulting for Autodesk products such as Fusion 360. We also have our Fusion Friday webinars, which we have every other week. And we talk about Fusion 360 topics, one of the many tools that Fusion 360 has, such as CAD, CAM, simulation, and you can find a lot of our past webinars on YouTube if you type in KETIV Fusion Fridays. I remind you guys that you guys can ask questions throughout the webinar, and then we'll gladly address those at the end.
All right, thank you for that, Brian. All right, so one of the topics that we are going to be discussing today are the tool libraries, right, inside of Fusion 360. So why are the tool libraries important to you? Really, one of the biggest reasons is efficiency, right? So Fusion 360 does come preloaded with hundreds of tools already in it, but why are you going to scroll through that tool list when you may or may not have all those tools available on your shop floor? So yeah, you always have the ability to copy those tools from the sample list and then add them to your own custom tool library, right? But then that comes again with editing the feeds and speeds that may or may not work for your material that you're machining, or maybe even the tool that you're using, right? So again, highly recommend that you start creating your custom tool library and start creating those recipes that you have already tested out. You also have consistency. So if you do get 2 or more seats of Fusion 360, you get what we call the Fusion team. Essentially, what that allows you to do is it allows your team members to work in one hub, giving you one centralized tool library then, right? So then your entire team is just going to work off of that single tool library. Everyone's going to be selecting from that tool library and have that consistency throughout the entire programming of your part. And then finally, accessibility. So again, if you do have your tool library enabled in the cloud, you are going to have access to this tool library wherever you may go. So if you go down to John's machine shop down the street, you log into Fusion 360 with your credentials, you are going to have access to that tool library, right? So you don't need to email yourself a file or create a thumb drive, with your tool library. And then finally, we'll talk about formula tools. So that's something that's relatively new to Fusion 360. So we'll go a little bit, talk about the formula tool, and then just see how you go about it when creating a custom tool. So let's go ahead and jump into Fusion. Let's go in here. All right, notice that we are in the modeling environment, right, of Fusion 360. Again, let's go ahead and jump into CAM workspace. Notice we do have various workspaces here, right? So throughout the year, if you guys are new to Fusion 360, we are going to be doing some topics regarding some of these other workspaces, right? So we're not just limited to certain workspaces inside of Fusion. We do go in depth with some of these other topics. All right, so for today, let's go ahead and stick to CAM. All right, so then this is where you're going to find your tool library, right? So we head over to the Manage panel. We see that if we hover over this little icon here, we get a little tooltip, right? What we call tooltip. So if you're new to Fusion 360 or just new to the CAM interface in general, whenever you hover over an object or an icon, you're going to get this tooltip giving you a quick description of what that command or that option is going to do, right? So let's go ahead and select the tool library. Now, again, this can get a little overwhelming, right? You do have multiple options here on your left. Multiple different sample libraries to pick from. So let's go ahead and start collapsing some of these drop downs. All right, so that makes it a little bit more manageable to work with. All right, so then let's go ahead and talk then about some of these 5 drop downs. So the documents one, essentially what the documents drop down is it's going to list out the tools that you have created for this certain model. So notice up here that I have the 2D milling model open and the 4-axis toolpath model open as well, right? In return, I get these 2 tabs here with the drop down of the tools that I've been using for that certain operation, right? So pretty useful. I'll touch a little bit more on the documents tab a little bit further down the line. But one thing to note too is that I've personally done it myself where I didn't have the tools I needed, but I knew that a certain model that I had worked on previously had those tools in it, right? So what I would do then is have that model open. While I was creating my new program, I would then select tools from this documents tab, and then again selecting from that open model, right? So pretty useful if you don't have tools available to you right away, and then that allows you the ability to select from these tools that you created. All right, so then the next dropdown is the cloud dropdown. So some of you may or may not see it. If you don't see this cloud dropdown, simply go over here to your name, go to preferences. Under general, make sure that you hover over to CAM and make sure that you have enabled cloud libraries checked, right? So that's going to give you the ability to then go to the tool library and add your custom libraries to the cloud dropdown, right? So again, this is really important in my opinion, because if you, for some reason, forget your laptop at work and you want to work from home, you're going to have these tool libraries available to you when you log into Fusion 360 with your credentials, right? So pretty useful drop down here.
So you're able to share with not only yourself, but also other team members in your hub, correct?
Yeah, so if you are sharing this this project, so that there's two ways that you have these tool libraries. If you're sharing this project with another person and you already have this program set up, the tools that you have in that program are going to be then listed under the documents tab, right? So then what Brian was referring to then was, again, if you get 2 or more seats and you get your Fusion team or your Fusion hub set up, your team hub set up, if you go here, switch hubs, notice that I'm part of a couple other team hubs. If I go ahead and click on this team hub and I add my tool library to the cloud library, the rest of the team is going to have access to that tool library as well, right? So again, giving you one centralized tool library and allowing your team to just select from that organized tool library that your manager is keeping track of, right? But you're not just limited to working on the cloud. Again, you can create your tool library local to your computer. So if you just want to keep a backup for whatever reason under your local dropdown, you can go ahead and create your tool library here as well, right? So another interesting dropdown is this vendors dropdown. So this, in my opinion, might get expanded or worked on a little bit more as Autodesk is partnering with some of these other tool vendors. But if you notice here, we have some tools that are already pre-created for us. Right? So if you take a look here, we already have a 1/2-inch flat end mill, some of Tormach's tools, right? Renishaw probes, you already have probes to pick from as well. And again, you always have the ability to either copy the tool or simply just hold the tool down and then drag it to your tool library, right? You already have some predefined tool holders as well that you can select from. And again, if you look up here, you do have the option to create your own custom tool holder, right? So you're not just limited to selecting tool holders from the preloaded ones. Here. All right, so again, going back to the Tormach tools, I do recommend you take advantage of these lathe tools, especially because sometimes it's a little bit more complicated to work with the lathe tools or create your lathe tool from scratch. Why not start with one of these and then just use that as your somewhere to start from. So again, if you can go ahead and copy the tool. You're not allowed to edit from the samples tool library, right? Notice that it's grayed out. You can just go over here, copy the tool. Let's add it to this 2D milling. Paste the tool, right? And then you can just go ahead and edit the tool to your measurements, right, or your parameters. So really useful to have some of these abilities to copy the tool and then make the edits into your library. Right. And then finally, you have the samples tool library. So again, it's a pretty big list, right? You can choose essentially hundreds of tools from this list. And again, it gives you a place to start, right? So you can always go ahead and copy the tool. and then send it over, and then just adjust the feed and speed that you're going to be using, or the working recipes that you have for your current tool or your machining needs. All right, so here's how the tool library works, right? So essentially, you're the one that's building these permanent libraries. So whether that be local to your computer or on the cloud, you're the one that's responsible for creating these permanent libraries. Now, when you open up a model and you start creating these toolpaths, those toolpaths or those tools are then going to get copied into this documents dropdown, right? So again, it's just creating a copy of this tool and adding it to your documents tab. So why is this important to you? It's important because if you want to make a change, let's say you get some chatter or you get some tool deflection, you want to bring down the speed on your tool, you can simply just go ahead and change the speed here on this documents tab, right? So then what that's going to allow you to do is keep that master tool library that you have intact, right? Because that may work for another part, right? But maybe for this specific part, the speed is a little bit too high. Bring it down on your documents tab, right? So again, let me go through that one more time. There's a couple ways to change the speed or the feeds and speeds of your tool. Let's say you wanted to change that for this specific operation. You can change it down here, right? That's one option. If you did want to change it for multiple operations, let's say just 2 specific operations, we know these 2 are using tool 1, right? You can go ahead and right click, hit compare and edit, right? So compare and edit gives you visibility to all the parameters that control that toolpath. So when you go ahead and just simply click edit on a single toolpath and you see those 5 tabs, those aren't your entire parameters, right? These are going to be the entire parameters that control that toolpath. Now, I'm not going to search through this entire list, so I can just type in speed. Notice that these 2 spindle speeds are different. We can go ahead and type in, let's say, 5250, and it changes both of them, right? So again, I definitely recommend you guys use this compare and edit, especially if you're not using, if you're using it for something else. Let's say you just want to switch maybe the optimal load on your tool, or maybe the depth of cut, and you don't want to switch to one single toolpath at a time. Just highlight the toolpaths that you're going to change and do that change inside the compare and edit tab. One thing to remember though is that if you do that change in this window, you're not going to see that change happen to the tool library, right? So if I go back to the tool library, tool 1, edit the tool. Let me go ahead and click, let me change that to back to 5500. All right, so spindle speed. Yeah, so changed it to, let's change it to 4500, right? Click OK. Right, operations will change now, right? So then that's going to be another way. So then from here, all you would have to do then is just regenerate the toolpath there. All right, so then again, if you do want to change the speed for the entire toolpaths, right? So instead of having to hit compare and edit and selecting the toolpaths, why not just go to the tool library under the documents, right? Because that's the tool that we're using. Select that 1/4" flat end mill, edit the tool. All right, feeds and speeds. Let's go ahead and change that then to 5500, right? Click OK. Notice that we get this warning telling us that the feeds and speeds are different. Do you want to go ahead and proceed with the changes? We do. Hit yes. And then just highlight these toolpaths and hit Control-G to regenerate. Right, so now if you go ahead and edit this toolpath, you'll see that we see the change there happen, right? So a couple different ways, like I mentioned, to do the changes there. Very easy to make the changes, so you're not just limited to working one way or another to make these changes. There's multiple different ways, especially when your programs start getting pretty big, right? So this isn't this isn't really a big program, but there's times when you have 20 different operations in a single folder, and then that's when you may or may not want to do those changes, right? So let's go ahead and create a tool. You can create a tool in two different places, right? You can create the tool in your documents, and then that tool is only going to be applied or saved with this document, or you can create a tool in one of your libraries over here, right? The cloud library or your local library. Let me go ahead and create a tool over here. So go ahead, make sure that you have 2D milling, create a new tool. Right, we get these tabs over here on the top. Let's start over here on the left with general. Now this information is going to be strictly for yourself, right? So you can enter a quick description. That description is then going to be visible over here on the description for the tool. And again, this is going to be information for you. You can even enter the website for this tool, making it really easy for you to find that tool and order it again once it's starting to wear down. But for this, I'm going to leave it blank. Let's go ahead and create a flat end mill. Now I'm going to go ahead and replace this contour toolpath with a different one. So let's go ahead and do a 5/16 flat end mill. Right, so that's going to be 125. Number of flutes. Right, so you get a pretty good diagram too of what dimensions you're going to be adjusting. So if you have a different size step flat end mill here, notice that it's highlighting up to the shoulder length. Now most websites or tool websites that sell their flat end mills have this dimension already noted in the description box, so you can just pick out all the information from there. It's 0.3125. I'm not going to change any of these parameters. Material, you can just change it to carbide, and then your number of flutes, right? So shaft, if you have a different, if you have a relief tool, this is where you would go ahead and do those changes, right? So just to show you guys what I'm talking about, let's say you had a relief, right? Notice that it starts tapering down a little bit, right? So we're not going to have that. We're just going to leave it straight. And then again, you can go ahead and select your holders. Now, highly recommend that you do select the correct holder that you're using. So that way, when you do simulate your toolpaths, you get the actual representation of what the machine is doing, right? So if you do have a holder collision, you want to make sure that you have that collision visible, right? All right, so then next is going to be your feeds and speeds. So the feeds and speeds tab is really going to be one of the most important tabs in my opinion. So again, this is where you're going to set your working recipes, right? So why are you going to change them or spend time creating more work for yourself when you're creating the toolpaths? Why not just have those working recipes set up here, right? So again, once you input the values here, you can go ahead and let's see, cutting feed rate. All right, so set a spindle speed of 6,500. Your feet per tooth, let's say we're going to leave it at 2,000 feet per tooth. And again, just set all your parameters, right? You can be sure that whenever you do select this tool, these feeds and speeds are going to go along with this tool, right? All right, so now the post processor tab. All right, so this is where you essentially number the tool, right? So if you already have this tool created in your or this tool in your carousel, just go ahead and input the number that it's at. For this case, let's say it's number 8. You want to make sure that the length offset is the same as the tool number, right? So at least for the Haas, I know that there's an H value associated with the tool. So let's say that for some reason we did length offset of 2, right? So what's going to happen then is in the post or in the program, you're going to have H2, which is going to be referencing tool 2. So if you have this tool selected and it's going to come down and machine this part, what's going to happen is if tool 2 is shorter than this tool, you're going to get a crash, right? Because the machine still thinks that it has some more space available, when in reality it's already touching the part. and then you're going to end up with a pretty bad day, right? So just make sure that for this case, the length offset is the same as your tool number. All right, so we can go ahead and add a comment to the tool. When you post your program, if you are one of the people that wants to see a comment with the tool, you can go ahead and do that right here, right? So we can do, I don't know, finishing. All right, hit OK. Notice that we have tool 8 created in the documents, right? So let's go exit out of here, and we can go ahead and just replace this tool then with a 5/16 tool. All right. So feeds and speeds came along with the tool. Go ahead and click OK. All right, so now let's go ahead and post this just to show you that that note came along with it as well. So let's do 501, posting it, and the note gets tagged along here, right? All right, so looks like we have a question here. Where would you enable the cutter comp G41 and G42? Okay, so that wouldn't be done in the tool library. I know a lot of people think that sometimes when you create a tool, that's where you have to enable the G41 or G42. You would do that essentially in the toolpath itself, right? So if you go here, right-click Edit. Under the Passes tab, you're going to see the compensation type. Go ahead and select Where. Right. So what Where is going to do is it's going to look at the computer, your controller. Once you input that value for the Where in your tool offsets, you're going to see that the program is going to pick up that value and adjust the profile correctly, or adjust the Where correctly. Right. So we go ahead and post that program out. Go ahead and rename it 502. Hit save. Right, if we, there it is. We look down here, we see that we have cutter comp enabled there, right? So again, this is really useful if you're doing, you know, either some bearing houses or some really accurate or tight tolerance work. This is where you would enable your cutter comp. Excuse me. All right, so moving forward then, let's say we had a custom tool to create, right? So in our case, let's go ahead and create a lollipop mill that has some sort of relief. Now, I know some of you may be asking that we do have lollipop mills here to create. So we go here, cutter, right? We have the option there. I find it easier, in this case, I found it easier to just create one that has a relief much faster by sketching it than by actually creating it inside of the tool library, right? So again, to create your custom form mill tool, let's go ahead and start a sketch. Start a circle. Let's actually start with an arc. All right, and now what we're gonna do is just do a 3-point arc. Somewhere over here. All right, so I'm gonna make these two vertical. It's gonna be a 1/4 inch diameter. All right. So this is really the only part I'm gonna dimension here. So let me go ahead and then just create the rest of the profile. Again, it was gonna be a relief tool, so let's go ahead and add the angle here and then just finish the profile. All right, so there's pretty much the basic outline of our tool. Now what you have to do then, notice again, we were in the modeling environment. Let's go over to the CAM environment. Up here, if you go to manage, you're gonna see the form mill tool or the form mill option. Notice that mine is already up here. So the reason that it's already up there is if you take a look, let's see, let me go ahead and remove it. Oops. remove that. So point is, if you go ahead and you, let's say, select an option from here, notice that you get these little arrows, right, pointing up. What that's going to do essentially then is it's going to bring up that tool to the top, right? So let me go ahead and bring this back up, right? So that's what happened there. It was in this list in this little drop down, and I just added it back to the top. Just make life easier. All right, so once we select that, we get these couple options asking for the tool profile. Go ahead and select the profile. The tool axis is going to be this one right here. Notice that we get this little red arrow pointing up, which is incorrect. So let's go ahead and flip the axis because the tool is going to be pointing down. Compensation point is going to be this bottom edge of the tool. Oh, come on. Click OK. Notice that nothing happened. So let's go back into the tool library. Under all, you see that we get the tool created here, right? So again, if you try to do an edit for this tool, you wouldn't be able to do it. So again, just go ahead and copy tool under the certain library here. Let's go ahead and just paste the tool, right? We have the tool over here on the top. So now you can actually give it a number to post out to. Go ahead and click OK. And we see that the tool gets created over here on the bottom, right? And you can add a holder to it as well, same as any of these other tools that we have available to us on the top there. All right, so let's come back to the slide. All right, so again, to reiterate what we did, walked over the how to create your own custom tool library, right? Again, it's really important to really organize your tools and have the correct feeds and speeds for those tools. And then in the long run, it's going to save you time. So definitely spend an hour or two creating those tool libraries and making sure that everything is set in order. And then we also created a custom tool to add toolpaths to some of your models that you may have, right? Because we don't always work with those predefined tools that are out. Sometimes you do need to create your custom tools. All right. All right, so I wanted to remind you guys too that we do sell Fusion Boost. So what Fusion Boost is, if you buy the license, a seat of Fusion 360 from us, or if you already have Fusion 360, you can buy the portion of Fusion Boost that essentially gives you all these different options, right? So we do have a introductory call when you do buy the Fusion 360 seat from us. Essentially what we do there is that we give you a hands-on implementation for you and your team. We set you guys up with Fusion 360 as well as give you a 1 hour quick overview of Fusion 360, right? So we answer any questions that you may have in the beginning. We also host a live training once a month. So again, that's a 4-hour training that we cover essentially the basics of Fusion 360. So we're going to be covering all the workspaces that Fusion 360 has to offer, as well as answer any questions that you may have up to this point. And then you will be getting 4 1-hour sessions with either Brian or myself. Again, if you have a list of questions, you save those questions, you use up one of your sessions and get 1 entire hour to
right. Instead of like using it all, like trying to train you all in one day and cram all that information in one day, that's usually not how the most efficient way to learn.
Yep.
So usually if you break it up into these sessions, a month later after you yourself dig into Fusion and learn about Fusion, you'll have your own questions to bring to us.
Exactly. And then we also check up with you guys, from time to time, make sure that everything's going smoothly and you're not having any issues with the tool, right? So again, here's the pricing for Fusion Boost. So if you do go to Autodesk website, you will see that it's $300. For us, we do sell Fusion 360 plus Fusion Boost for $500. Now, if you're in need of Fusion Ultimate, we also sell Fusion Boost attached with it. That's going to be $17.99 there, right? So again, if you have any questions regarding Fusion Boost or just any questions regarding any of the tools that we sell here at KETIV or we consult with, feel free to reach out. Don't hesitate to reach out. We're here to help, and we really want to make you guys more successful with the tools that you're using.
Right. Yeah.
All right. So at this point, have you guys had any questions?
Yeah, we have a question from George. He's asking, is the cloud library for tools available for all of the versions of Fusion 360?
Yeah. So when you update the tool library inside of Fusion 360, you're going to have those tools regardless, right? So if there's a version of Fusion 360, it's always going to be up to date, right? So regardless of whether you had a tool in, let's say, a later version of Fusion, once Fusion updates, you're still going to have that same tool library, right? So yeah, regardless of what update you're on in Fusion, you're always going to have that tool library.
Right.
I'll go ahead and post a link. This isn't related to the tool library, but it's related to the comparisons between the different versions of Fusion 360, such as like the trial version, the standard version, and Fusion 360 Ultimate.
All right. It says here too, there's a question asking if we wanted to post our tool library to Excel, can we do that? Yeah, you can. So let's go to Fusion. Let's say we want to post out this tool library. Again, if you right click on the cloud, this is where you would create your tool library, import your tool library. So if you do have a tool library from so maybe a friend that you're working with and you want to import it to the cloud, you can import it through here, right? So again, here's my tool library. Let's go ahead and export the tool library then. If you take a look down here, instead of the save type as tools, you can go do a tab separated values. So that way, when you open it in Excel, you're going to have this tool library available to you there.
All right. So it doesn't look like we have any more questions. Thank you guys for attending. We will be having another Fusion Friday in 2 more weeks. So that'll be on thermal simulation. That's going to be an exciting new topic for us. So if you guys have any suggestions for future Fusion Fridays, leave it in the chat room, and or contact us, email us, call us, and we'll gladly consider creating that for the future Fusion Friday.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you guys for joining us today.